Hey guys, I'm Avish. This is the 27th video of .NET MAUI with Syncfusion control series. Let's quickly review our previous session before we get started. In the previous session, we learned about the radial chart type from circular charts and funnel charts. We discussed various stages or phases of funnel charts and focused on width, data labels and directions of funnel charts. Please review the previous session before proceeding. In this session, we will focus on pyramid and radial gauge charts. Pyramid charts are graphical representations that resemble the shape of a pyramid and are used to display hierarchical data or illustrate a structure with a decreasing order of importance or size from the top to bottom. There are several types of pyramid charts and they can be applied in different contexts. Funnel and pyramid are terms that are often used metaphorically in different contexts to represent various concepts. Here are a couple of common ways these terms are used. In summary, funnel is commonly used in the context of sales and marketing to represent the customer journey towards a purchase, while pyramid is often used in the context of organizational structures to represent hierarchical levels of authority and responsibility. The usage and meaning of these terms can vary depending on specific context in which they are applied. The common usages are population pyramid is a specific type of pyramid chart that represents the age and gender distribution of a population. The chart typically has two vertical bars, one for each gender, and the bars are divided into age groups. Pyramid charts are also used for data comparison. They are also used in sales funnel pyramids. While creating pyramid charts, it is important to choose the type that best suits the data or information you want to convey. Along with the pyramid charts, we'll be focusing on radial gauge charts. A radial gauge, also known as a radial dial, radial indicator, or radial meter, is a type of graphical representation used to display information along a circular scale. It is often employed to visualize data points or measurements in a circle or semicircular format. Radial gauges are commonly used in dashboards, instrumentation, and data visualization applications. Some of the key features and components typically found in radial gauges are circular scale, which is the main component in the radial gauge that represent the range of value. This scale is divided into sections, each corresponding to specific data. A needle or pointer moves along the circular scale to indicate the current value or measurement. The position of the needle relative to the scale provides a visual representation of the data. Radial gauges often include labels and markings along the scale to help users interpret the displayed values accurately. This may include numerical labels, tick marks, and other indicators. The circular scale may be divided into different color ranges or zones to highlight specific regions of interest or to categorize data points. Some radial gauges include a numerical display of the current value, either next or integrated with the gauge. Let's now switch to the coding session and get going. I have the project and the solution file that we have been using from the previous session. In the previous session, we have created a funnel chart, and in this session, let's see how we can create a pyramid chart. Pyramid and funnel charts are pretty similar. It's just that the pyramid is an inverse of funnel chart. Let me switch back to the code and quickly create a view file for the pyramid chart and also the view model and bind the data. Let me stop the application. Let me right click on this view folder, add new item, and choose .NET MAUI content page SAML file and name this as new page to pyramid charts.saml. Let me switch back to the code and add the view model binding, and then I'll also add the charts, and then let me add the converter that we have used in the previous session, and then let me name this as pyramid chart. Now let's focus on the view model for the pyramid chart. So let me create a pyramid chart view model. Ideally, we can use the funnel chart view model as well, where we have binded the data. Same data can be bound to the pyramid chart as well, but to isolate the use cases, I'm creating a new view model file over here. Right click on a new item and click on code, choose the class file and change this from class 1 to pyramid charts view model file. Alright, once this is done, let me create this as a public class and let me create a constructor that we have been doing from the previous session. Let me close this class as well. Similar to what we have done, I'm going to add the using statements for object model. Look at that, it's removing the using statement. That's because we are not using any of the observable collection. So let me create a observable collection right after this constructor and keep it handy, and then we can resolve the using statement by mouse hovering on the observable collection by clicking on show potential fixes, or I can import the namespace directly since I know the namespace. Once this is done, let me create two properties and assign the values for this chat's data and then for the chat colors that we have been doing in the previous session. If I just switch back to the funnel chat view model, you see we already have the chats data. Right now I'm just naming it as just the chats data 2. So let me remove this one and then let me initialize the chats data and the chats colors in the generate data source. Now let's invoke the generate data source as well in the constructor. Now our view model is ready and we can bind this view model in the XAML file. We can create the Syncfusion pyramid chat by dragging and dropping the Syncfusion pyramid chat from the Syncfusion toolbox. You can enable the toolbox by clicking on extension syncfusion.MAUI and launch toolbox, which will take you to this extension MAUI toolbox. Now you can drag and drop this pyramid chat as I stated earlier. However, I want to copy the chat from the funnel chat and change the properties to the pyramid chat. We can easily achieve that without wasting some time. So let me switch to the funnel chat and let me add all of these settings. Let's say in the content page, I need the content resources. So let me copy from the content resources from funnelchats.xaml file and copy and paste these resources into the pyramid chat. So let me paste them here. Once that is done, I don't need the tool template. I just need the tool template 2. Remember, we were binding the tool template 2 in the previous session for the funnel chat. So let me retain that and remove the other tool template. Let me switch back. We have been using the scroll view. So let me copy the scroll view and paste it right after this resources. And then we have let me close the scroll view as well. Within the scroll view, we are going to create the stack layout and the funnel chat. So let me copy the complete scroll view, switch back to the pyramid chats.xaml and replace the scroll view with the pyramid chat. Now we have the funnel data. Now we need to change this to the pyramid chat. It is pretty simple. After the chat, you have SF funnel chat. You just need to rename this to SF pyramid chat. Wherever the funnel chat is there, we just need to replace it with the pyramid chat. That's all it is. Now let me check one more time to see if it is replaced successfully in all the places. So instead of funnel data, it will be pyramid data label settings. And instead of funnel, let me delete this. Automatically, I can populate the pyramid data label settings. It looks good right now. We're also binding the data template. We're also binding the data source. Now look at that. We have the funnel chats model. Let me delete this and replace it with pyramid chats view model. That's it. So the binding context is for pyramid. Let me see if there is any keyword called funnel. Yeah, there you go. We have the item source which is pointing to the funnel chats data. We have just created as chats data 2 and chats colors. Let me search again if there is anything called funnel. I don't see anything called funnel now. Now we have the pyramid chat.xaml. So the next step for me is to go to the appshell.xml file, copy and paste this flyout item, paste it here, call this as pyramid chats. Looks like there is an error. So let's correct that in a moment. Let me remove this and change the route to pyramid chats. Also the view will be changed to pyramid chats. Then the title, of course, we will change this title to pyramid chats. That's all it is. Let's run the application and notice the output. Notice that the pyramid chat is ready with the tooltip enabled with the separator as well that we have used it from the funnel chats. Now let me switch back and show you that we have enabled the tooltip, palette brushes, data labels, and all of these properties are enabled. There's one more property in the pyramid chat, which is the mode. The mode could be a linear or a surface mode. So let me choose the surface mode and linear mode and see how it changes. Notice that the linearly it is distributed rather than with the value. So it's up to you what mode you want to choose. For now, let me keep it to surface. Before that, let me switch to linear and show you back the data. By default, the linear mode is selected for the pyramid chat. So let me switch back to the surface mode and keep it intact. There's one more property that we can add to the pyramid chat is the gap ratio. So the gap ratio between the pyramid tiles can be changed to, let's say, gap ratio, let me call it as 0.2, and you will see the significant difference, the spacing between the tiles on the pyramid. So this you can control it dynamically depending on your requirement and customization. Now that we are done with the pyramid charts, let's now create the radial charts. Let me right click on the view, add new item. Let me choose content page again and name this as radial gauge.xaml file. Radial gauges are commonly and widely used in the real world. Let it be the speedometer, the thermometer, or the directions. Everywhere radial gauges are commonly used. Let's now learn how to create the radial charts. Let's start off with a simple radial gauge. So let me remove this label, and I'm not going to add any view model until the next session. For now, let's create some simple radial gauges and understand the axis of the radial gauge. So within the vertical stack layout, let me go to the Syncfusion and drag and drop the Syncfusion radial gauge. Notice that we now have an error at the SF radial gauge. That's because we need to import the package. Let me go to the Solution Explorer, right click on Syncfusion MAUI app, click on Manage NuGet Packages, and search for syncfusion.maui.gauges. Choose the gauges, and I'm currently using, I'm using 23.1.36. Let me remove this to see the latest version that I'm using right now. So it is 23.1.36. So let me browse the same version of gauges and install 23.1.36. Once the package is installed, please notice that the error is gone. We now have a default SF radial gauge. We have radial as well as linear gauges. We will focus now on radial gauge, and later in the next set of sessions we'll look into the linear gauges. So we now have a radial gauge, we have an axis and radial axis. Let's run this application and notice the output. Notice that it is showing the pyramid chart that we have created earlier. Let me stop this application, switch to the Solution Explorer and go to the regular appshell.xaml file, and then let me copy and paste this flyout item and change this to radial gauge and change this as radial gauge, title as well, radial charts, and let me run this application now. Notice that we now have a radial gauge available starting from 0 to 100, and we have multiple options such as interval, minimum and maximum that we can play around with. Let's say within the radial axis, we can mention that minimum could be around it starts from -60, or let's say it start from -100, and then to maximum could be 100. So let me change this minimum and maximum and play around with it, and look at that. Let me switch back to the code and see that it has auto adjusted between the minimum and maximum. Let me switch back again and make that minimum to maximum to 100 and minimum to 0, which is a standard measurement. And this gauge could be anything. It could be a temperature, it could be a speed, it could be anything, the angle at which we are doing. And we can also increase the interval size by adding the interval property. Now notice that the moment I add the interval property, you see the difference over here, how the radial gauge got itself adjusted. And moreover, we can also make it as a dashboard clusters in the cars where it starts with a different angle. Let's say my start angle could be at 180 degrees. Now you may ask me a question, where exactly is 180? Now look at here, the right corner is the east, which is 0 degrees, and if it goes down to 90, then to 180, then to 270, and then one circle is 360. So it starts at 0, ends at 360 for a full circle. Now let's say my start angle is 180 and end angle is automatically at this position. So I can also mention that, hey, you know what, my start angle is at 90 and it ends at 180, and this is what you get. So this is the gauge what you will get within the axis. So you have the angle customization. You do have a option called a radius factor. Let's say you want to have multiple axes. You can also create another axis within this and say that my other axis is actually starting from 0.5. Let me remove this start angle and end angle from here and keep it minimum and maximum with an interval. I can remove the interval as well, and I can change this to the radius factor as 0.5. Now notice that we have two radials gauges which are available. One is the inner one is the outer one. That's because I have created two radial axes, one by default starting from 0 to 100, the other which is the outer one. And I could also call this the inner or outer one as with an interval of 20 so that we can have a couple of radial axes. Now let me switch back and show you again. Look at that. There is a difference. The outer one is having 10 difference, the inner one is having 20 difference. Let's now add few more axis based customizations. Let's say on the radial gauge, I would add background color is LS blue, and switch back, you have the complete background color. And there are a few properties such as can rotate labels. That means based on the axis, we can make the labels rotate as per the axis. So let me enable that property to one of the radial axis. Let's say I'll add it to the outer one, and notice the difference that it is starting with the pointer and ending with the pointer, and the number is aligned with the pointer with the can rotate labels. There's also another property which we can use is inversed property. So let me add one more radial axis gauge. Instead of that, let me also say that this is inversed as true. So let me switch back and show you that. Now it starts from 0 on the right to 100 on the left. So that's the inversed axis that is available in the customization. So let me remove it for now. And then we can also mention maximum label count on the first one. So let's say the moment I add that, you see that it is starting from 0, 5, 10, 15. So the difference is 5 between each of these labels. Along with that, we can add more axis line customization such as thickness, thickness unit, fill, and gradient. Let me show you a couple of those properties within the radial axis. So I would say within the first radial axis, I would add gauge. It all goes with the gauge and the radial axis dot axis line style. So remember that we are trying to change the axis line style here, and then we are going to change the radial line style, which is gauge radial line style. And then we have the properties such as thickness unit, which is either factor or pixel. Let me choose pixel, and then I have the thickness equal to 30. This is one customization that we can do within the radial axis. Now let me switch back and notice the output. Look at that, it is completely changed with the axis with the thickness and thickness unit. I can omit it for now. The one that we can add is the fill for the thickness and axis. So let's say I will add a fill equal to, let me add a, and switch back and notice the output. Look at that, we now have the axis with filled brush color. The beauty of this axis fill is we can add the gradients as well. Let's say for the inner one, I want to add the gradient stops. So let me use this one and add the same properties. Let me copy this axis line style within the second radial and fill it with some light green, and instead of line style, I can start, instead of filling it, I can say gradient stops within this. So how do I do that? Dot gradient within the radial line style. I will close the radial line style, and within the line style we have gauge radial line style dot gradient stops. The moment I do that, I can add couple of gradient stops at a particular value to make it look different. So I would say gauge colon gradient stop value, let's say the value of 40. I'm going to add a color called light pink, and then I'm going to add another gradient stop. After this, I'm going to add one more property that at a point related to 80, I'm going to add another gradient. So let me change it to light sky blue. Now once this is done, let me switch back and show you the output. Look at that, we have the gradient applied to the inner axis. There are a couple of more customizations that we can add to the axis. Let's say we want to have the label as the outer side, so we can mention the label position as the outer side for the first axis. So let me switch back here and say label position equal to outer side. Now when I switch back, you notice that we have the label position being created on the outer side part of it. Along with this, we can also mention the currency within the axis. Now in order to do that, we need to add a cultural info. Let me stop this application and switch back to the code. We can create the current culture info, and then we can assign the number format for the currency symbol as dollar, pound, whatever we need. Now let's say I'm assigning it as a dollar. Let me switch back and we have an option called label format. So I would say label format equal to C, which means currency. Let me run this application again, restart the application again, and notice the output that we have the dollar prefixed to the values within the inner circle radius. Notice that we now have the label format as dollar before this values. That's because the current thread culture info is info, which is nothing but the currency symbol is as dollar. That's how it is. With this, we have successfully understood pyramid charts and radial gauge access properties. In the next session, we will focus on advanced features of radial gauge charts. Till then, thank you for listening and have a great day.